So today I am going to show you how to make a veggie head, which looks something like this. All right, so like this guy. Okay, so we are going to use Photoshop and we're going to learn how to use the selection tools. We're going to learn how to use the layers and learn how to group objects together. We're going to learn all kinds of new stuff in Photoshop. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and you're going to download the two files that I have created in or have added to Google Classroom for you. So it is called Veggiehead 1 and 2. Go ahead and download those to your Student U Drive, create a new folder and name it Veggiehead and put them inside that folder. Then you're going to open up Photoshop. We're going to go ahead and open up those two folders or files. So we're going to go to File, Open, and you're going to locate Veggiehead 1 and Veggiehead 2. If you hold the Shift key and select both of them, you can open them both and they'll open in different tabs. Okay, so here's 1 and 2. Then I'm going to create a brand new document. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to go ahead and make this 8.5 inches, 8.5 by 11 inches. You can do either vertical or horizontal. I'm going to go ahead and go with the landscape orientation and then make sure resolution is 300, RGB color mode. We're going to rename this first initial last name underscore Veggiehead and hit create. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to use your selection tools. So we're going to grab one of these objects to make his face. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you use. You're going to make his head. And I'm going to go ahead and grab, let's use the apple. So I'm going to go ahead and use my, we're going to use a couple different selection tools. I'm going to show you what each one does. So the lasso tool, what that does, it's more of a free-form tool. Okay, so you can click and drag and make your selection. You come to your starting point to end it. And now I have a selection. So I'm going to go ahead and do Control C to copy my selection and come back to my new document. I'm going to actually change the color of my document, the background to black so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to paste it. Control V to paste. Okay, so it looks okay. Got rid of everything else, but now I have this white white area that I still have around my apple. So that's not a selection tool that I would use for this project. I'm going to go ahead and do Control D to deselect and use the next one, the polygonal lasso tool. So what this one does, it makes a straight line. So you click, 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 click. Okay, and every time you click, it makes a line. Again, you can see that it selected the white area. If I selected that, copied it, pasted it on here, you can see that's not what I want. The next one, I'm going to do Control D to deselect, is the magnetic lasso tool. Okay, so this one actually is one of the options that works pretty well for this assignment. So all you got to do is click one time and then just drag around your apple or your object, and it's going to grab pixels that are similar. So you can see here that if I go back down here, I grabbed some and I missed some. So I'm going to hit backspace on the keyboard until I get back to that spot. And then I can go back and now I can, if it's still missing it, you can click and add an anchor point and it'll grab it manually. And then you click on where you started and you can already tell that this is a much better selection than before. So I'm going to do Control C, come over here and do Control V to paste. All right, so that looks pretty good. So that's an option as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple more. The next one is your quick selection tool. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that up here it's on this first one, which is the selection. So this would add pixels and this one would subtract pixels if you grabbed too many or did not grab enough. All right, so I'm just going to click and it selected my object. Control C, that was that easy. And then let's delete this first one. Do Control V to paste. And you can tell over here, I've got a background layer and then layer one when I pasted. This is my apple. Okay, so Photoshop creates its layers for you, not all the time, most of the time. So make sure to be aware of the layer that you're working on when you're in Photoshop. All right, so the next selection tool is going to be the last one, the magic wand tool. So with this one, you're going to click, and then of course it's going to grab the whole thing. It doesn't always work that easy. If I were to grab something that had more color to it, or different tones, values, different shadows and highlights, let's change the tolerance level on this back to 32, or which I think is the default. So if I start clicking, you can tell it's grabbing pieces that, and it's like being very picky about which pixels it's selecting. So this obviously would not be the greatest option for this project. So let's go ahead and click on the apple. So you can see where it's highlighting or where it's selecting. It's not selecting the highlights. It's not selecting the shadows. It's only selecting like that main part that I had selected. Oops. So if I deselect, if I clicked on the highlights, then it's going to highlight or select the highlights. Okay. And so I would not use that tool. I would either use the magnetic lasso tool or the quick selection tool for this assignment. Okay, so we have our selection here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building my veggie head by grabbing other pieces of fruit or vegetables and making a face and a body. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and pause it, and I'm going to grab some pieces, and I'll come back when I am all done with my head and my body. One thing that I do want to tell you or show you before I let you move on is after you've selected one of your objects, let's say my apple. Okay, so my apple is selected. Got the marching ants around it, which is what we call the selection. And then I go to select something else. It's not going to release that selection. So what I need to do before I click on something else is hit Control D to deselect. I can also come up here to the select option. Oops, let me reselect that. Come up here to the select option and hit deselect, and that will deselect my object as well. So if I don't, I'm going to have more than one object selected, and that's not what I want. Okay, so I've brought over my blueberry for the eyeball. So what I wanted to show you was how to make a copy of my layer so I didn't have to go back over and copy it again. So it's already saved to the clipboard, so I can just do Control V and it's going to be there, but it's going to be the same size as it was when I brought it over the first time, because I did have to resize it. What I could do as well, you can do, that's one way to do it. So I'm going to click over here and hit delete on my layer panel. I can right click on my layer 3, which is my blueberry, and I can hit duplicate layer, and it will copy that exact piece right on top of it. And I just need to move it over. Okay, so it gives me an exact replica of my copy. Okay, and you can rename these layers if you want to. So if you double click on the word layer and then rename them, left eye and then right eye. It's up to you if you want to rename them. Usually it is a good idea to rename your layers as you're working so you know what is what. You can also turn on the eyeball, turn off the eyeball to show the visibility of your object, just like in Illustrator. Okay, so working in the layer panel is really important in Photoshop, and it's something that you always need to have opened. Okay, if it's not showing, you're going to go to Window and turn on Layers. Okay, and yeah, it's really important. Okay, so I just brought my banana over and it came in this way, but I need to rotate it. So I'm going to go ahead, and once you bring it in, hang on, let me actually change this real quick. Let me undo this. I'm going to go to Control V to paste it. All right, so it came in like this. What I'm going to do is transform it. So Control T is your shortcut to transform, and it brings up this bounding box. Now I can rotate it. If I hold the Shift key and I get that little rounded arrow, hold the Shift key, I can rotate it at 15-degree increments. Hold the Shift key and pull in from the corner, and it'll let me resize my object. Hold the Shift key and pull in from the corners. This is going to be very, very important as we're working in Photoshop. Okay, so there, and then hit enter on the keyboard to conform your transform. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and give it some ears and a nose and then maybe some hair. Okay, so I actually wanted to use the strawberry for my nose, but I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see this a little bit better. So I've made my selection, but I don't want the green to show. So what I'm going to do is click on this minus up here with my selection tool, my magic wand, or my quick selection selected. Make sure to click on the minus, and then this is going to subtract pixels that I do not want to include. So you can see that the marching ants are kind of shrinking back to the edges of my strawberry. Okay, if my brush size is too big, I can use the bracket keys on the keyboard, the left and right bracket. The left bracket will make it smaller and the right bracket will make it bigger. And the bracket keys are located right next to the letter P on the keyboard. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and bring it on over. Okay, so I just brought his ears in and they are on top of the apple. So what I actually want to do is make them go kind of behind it. So they look like they're just kind of sticking out. I don't want to see these pieces right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select both of my ears. I know it's this one and this one. Okay, so I'm going to hold the shift, click on the first one, hold the shift key and click on the second one. That will select two objects at one time. Then I'm going to click and drag these down below my apple layer, and that will put them right behind that apple layer. So if you think of these as pieces of paper, I just kind of stacked them behind each other. And then my auto select button is on. What that means is if I click on anything I click on, it's going to select. You can notice it jumps. My selections jump when I click on objects on my artboard. Okay. If that button is not on and it's unchecked, if I click, it won't select. It'll only, you have to actually manually come over and select your objects to move them. Okay. So if I wanted to select this and I clicked on it and I'm like, oh, I grabbed the wrong ear. I would have to actually physically go over here to the layer panel and grab that ear and then move it. Unless your auto select button was on. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is add some hair. All right, so I'm all done with the head. I'm going to go ahead and group these layers all together so they are located in one file. So what I'm going to do is click on my first layer, hold the shift key, and click on my last layer. And then I am going to either click on this folder right here, and it'll put them in a group, or I can do Control G, which is the shortcut, and double click on the word group one and name this head so I know what is inside this folder. And if I open up this arrow, it's going to show me all of my layers. This way, when I click on my head file, I'm going to uncheck the auto select. Now I can move my head around and everything moves together. So it's kind of like grouping everything just like we did in Illustrator. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make my body now and do the same thing and group it together in a folder. Okay, so I have a head and a body. They're all grouped in files. I can move them together and checking the auto select button. Okay, I can move my body. And now I'm going to put him in a virtual vacation. So what I'm going to do is go to, let's see, bring over my tab, go to Pixabay, pixabay.com, and what I'm going to do is look for a background image. So think about where you would put your guy, your veggie head. What kind of location would you put him in? It can be anywhere. It can be outer space. It could be the ocean. It can be a lake. Let's go with outer space. Now that I say outer space, I may want to redo my entire veggie head and make him an astronaut. I should have thought about that to begin with. All right, so let's put him on a planet. Let's put him here. Let's put him on, oh, that's Earth. Okay, so I don't want that one because it's taking me to iStock. That is not what I want. I want it to be free. So I'm going to click on this picture and then hit free download, and then it's going to give me this pop up, hit download, and then it's going to download my file and save it to my download folder on my computer. I'm going to then place my image. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. So the difference between embedded and linked is if you place embedded and you change the picture, it's not going to change on this particular document. It will only change where you changed it. Like if you edit it, you change the color, you crop it, you do whatever. If I hit place linked and I changed the file of that picture somewhere else, it's going to change it inside this document. So I'm going to go place embedded and click on universe, and it's going to place it. And if you notice, look at my layer panel where it placed it right in between my head and my body. Okay, so what I need to do is move it behind my body. So click and drag and let go. And then I'm going to go ahead and select my head and body holding the shift key so both of them get selected. And then I can go ahead and place him right there. And now I've got him on this background. I'm going to go ahead and add some text. So I'm going to click on my text tool. Okay, we don't have as many text features in Photoshop as we do in Illustrator, but we do have some features. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this warp tool up here. So just like in Illustrator, I guess I have to type out my text. So what I want you to do is you can either give your Veggiehead a name or type out a little message. Okay, wish you were here. Okay, and then maybe use the warp tool to go ahead and give it a little bit of a warp. Okay, and then I can come up here to this color box and change the color of my text. If I wanted to pull a color from my picture, if you notice now that I have the color picker open, my eyedropper tool is showing. I can go ahead and click anywhere on my canvas and it's going to pull a picture or a color from my image. That's actually kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and move this and move it down. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to name it, make sure it's, click on my Student U drive, create a new folder, name it Veggiehead. If you haven't already, you should have already at this point. Make sure it's named your first initial, last name, Veggiehead. Change it to a Photoshop document, and that means it will save your layers. Okay, if you do not save your layers, you cannot come back and edit this photo later. Hit save. Okay, and then I'm going to save it again, save as, but I'm going to change it to a JPEG file. Okay, so a JPEG is a flattened image file. Once I save that flattened image file, I cannot come back and change the layers on a JPEG file. You're going to turn both of those files into Google Classroom, and yeah, that's it.